The cameras had barely started rolling when the tension became thick enough to cut with a knife. Senator John Kennedy sat across from George Stephanopoulos on the set of Good Morning America, his trademark wit and Southern charm flashing in his eyes. But behind the polite smile, something simmered. The producers expected a typical interview, a few sparring exchanges, maybe a laugh or two. What they got instead was an explosive clash that would shake the network and leave Kennedy abruptly escorted off the stage. The moment began innocently enough. Stephanopoulos opened with what seemed like a straightforward question about Kennedy's stance on government accountability. But the phrasing carried a bite, the kind that implied Kennedy's beliefs were outdated or even harmful. Kennedy chuckled at first, tilting his head like a teacher about to correct a mischievous student. "George," Kennedy drawled, "you sound like you're auditioning for a debate team rather than hosting a morning show. Maybe slow down and let the American people decide what's outdated." The audience gave a nervous laugh, sensing the crackle in the air. Stephanopoulos pushed harder, his questions growing sharper, more loaded. He accused Kennedy of dodging facts, of leaning on folksy one-liners instead of serious policy. Kennedy's face tightened, his humor giving way to frustration. "You call it folksy, George," he shot back, his voice rising, "but I call it talking plain English so people outside this studio can understand. Not everyone wants to be buried under Washington doublespeak. You ever been to Louisiana? You ever talked to a farmer who's trying to keep his land? Or a small business owner trying to survive? Those people don't care about your spin, they care about solutions." The room fell silent. For a split second, Stephanopoulos blinked, caught off guard by the senator's passion. But the anchor, polished and unyielding, recovered quickly. He cut Kennedy off, insisting that the senator's approach was reckless and dismissive of journalistic integrity. That's when Kennedy leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Integrity?" he echoed. "Let me tell you something, George. Integrity isn't asking questions designed to make you look smart. Integrity is giving your guest a chance to speak, even if you don't like the answers. Integrity is respecting the people who are watching this show right now, trying to figure out what's true and what's theater. And right now, sir, you're giving them theater." The audience gasped. A producer in the background waved frantically, signaling for a commercial break. But Kennedy wasn't finished. He spoke directly into the camera, bypassing Stephanopoulos entirely. "Folks, you deserve honesty, not prepackaged narratives. If the people in charge of these shows won't give you that, then maybe it's time you start asking them the hard questions." That was the breaking point. Stephanopoulos cut in, his voice sharp, and the producers rushed onto the set. With an almost surreal swiftness, security moved in, politely but firmly escorting Kennedy offstage as the broadcast cut to a hastily arranged commercial. The incident sparked headlines within minutes. John Kennedy kicked off Good Morning America after clash with Stephanopoulos. Some praised Kennedy for standing his ground, calling him a truth-teller unafraid of the media machine. Others criticized him, arguing he'd crossed the line and disrespected the host. But behind the storm of commentary, Kennedy sat quietly in his car outside the studio. For the first time that day, he allowed himself a deep breath. He knew he hadn't gone there to win favor with the press, he'd gone there to represent the people who often felt voiceless. As his staff nervously checked their phones, Kennedy looked out at the busy New York streets. Life went on at the taxi horns, the chatter of passers-by, the skyscrapers reaching toward the sky. He smiled faintly. "You know," he said to no one in particular, "sometimes getting kicked off the stage just means you're standing on the right side of the truth." That single line, repeated later in interviews, became the defining takeaway. It wasn't about who won the argument or who got the last word. It was about courage, the courage to speak plainly, even when the stage lights glare and the critics circle like vultures. And while the network tried to bury the moment under polished press statements, the clip lived on, spreading far beyond the studio walls. People watched, shared, debated, and remembered. Because sometimes, the most powerful message isn't delivered in calm agreement but in the fire of a clash, when someone refuses to bend, and in doing so, reminds us all of the value of truth. In the end, John Kennedy's removal from the set wasn't a humiliation, it was a statement. One that proved, for better or worse, that standing your ground in the face of opposition can leave a mark that no spotlight can erase.